Hi, I'm Gary Cox, and I'm a Senior Technical Consultant with Bluefish Development Group. Today we're going to talk about an Ephesoft customization that we did. It's pretty straightforward. One of the things about Ephesoft is, not only can you use it for auto extraction rules where you want to automatically figure out what's on a page and write that out to fields. There may be cases where you have a field or two that are just not really suited to auto extraction. Doesn't mean you can't use Ephesoft, it still works great. Let's say you have 10 fields and you've got 9 of them that you can extract through lookups on the document itself, but then you have one where a human sort of needs to be involved. No problem, you can still do that during the validation screen. One of the things we've just done, we have a client where one of the fields needed to be entered by a human, and it was a known list of the possible values. However, it was a long list, maybe say 200 values. To reduce error and to speed up the entry process, we wanted them to be able to pick from a pick list and then select a value and have it written out to the field. Not only does that speed things up, but then you're constraining it to known values so you don't have data entry issues. Rather than do an extensive customization, we decided to just piggyback on top of the existing suggestion box functionality that's already in the validation plugin. The way it works out of the box is if you do an extraction and you come up with several fields that are potential hits, potential values, Ephesoft will list those in the XML file for the batch as alternate values for that field. Now, one value may be entered, but those alternate values are written out into the XML. And if you have the suggestion box turned on in the validation plugin, when you are in that field, you can actually see the pop-up with possible other values. Now, rather than relying on extracted field values through auto extraction, we knew that a human would have to read these. What we did instead is sort of just, like I said, piggyback on this and read in a set of values into the extraction Java script that's there and provide those as possible values. It's actually a really straightforward customization. After this, I will show you on the computer. There's only a couple of files that needed to be touched. Rather than writing alternate values through auto extraction, we're programmatically reading a properties file that has a list of values, going through that list, and setting alternate values in the XML. From the user side, all they see is they start typing, and all of a sudden a pick list comes up with possible values they can select from, and they can enter one of those values. Now, the demonstration I'm going to show you at my computer, it's a very simplistic example. I just have a field called city, and that has about 5 different cities in the state of Texas, and you can choose one of those. Now, for our actual deployment for our client, we had maybe 200 values, and they were long strings, and to have to hand type those would have been very tedious. But it was very simple to put this into place. We have a properties file they can modify when needed to add new values. So it's a neat little customization that requires very little actual programming. It's pretty straightforward to make. So now I'm going to show you on the computer how we did this. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so we're at my desktop now, and you can see from the screen that I've created a batch class called demonstration batch, and we opened up the validate document module in the validate document plugin, and this plugin has several different configuration settings that are possible. By default, this one, suggestion box switch, is turned off. However, we've enabled this, and when that's turned on, if you have alternate value suggestions for a field, and you start typing in a field, it'll actually pop up a little window with the alternate values in a list. And so by default, these are set kind of automatically based on extraction. Maybe things that had a lower confidence value that are added as possible alternates, and the highest confidence is the one that was selected. But you may need to change that value. So what we're doing here, rather than using the sort of automatic extraction, is we're assuming that we have a field somewhere that we're not going to be able to extract. Just maybe there's some human thinking that's just definitely going to be required on this field. So maybe you have 10 different fields in a document type for Ephesoft, and 9 of them are great and automatically extracted, and then one you kind of want a human to take a look at. And let's say the possible values are set values, but maybe it's from a long list of possible values, and rather than having them freehand type everything, you can actually set a list of values and have it pop up in a suggestion box. This not only speeds up data entry, it also reduces error because you have consistent values that are entered. So to kind of demonstrate what this is, my batch class has a single field. I'm going to jump over to the batch detail screen. You can see I'm in a validation or extraction window here. I'm basically validating the document. I've only created one field called city, and city is a toy example because normally that'd be a pretty easy thing to read. But it gives you kind of a real-world idea of a possible value that might be read. So in this case, I have a simple regex to not let this go forward unless there's actual text in here. I have in my test class, I have no extraction rule whatsoever. It's not even trying to populate anything automatically. But rather than a human having to just type something at random, if once I start typing a city, you can see I get a pop-up. And in this case, I have a few Texas city names here. And if I type A, it brings up all the ones with A in it. And I got Austin or San Antonio. I can pick that value. And let's say Houston. So I can pick that. El Paso is also in there. So this will greatly speed up data entry in this case. And this is an assumption here that this is something that can't be auto-extracted easily. So rather than even trying, we're just going to pre-populate a alternate value list with a bunch of possible values that we know are legitimate, and then a user will enter this field. Now in the real world scenario, you might have 10 15 fields in here, and maybe most of them are auto-extracted through key value pair matching or something along those lines. The actual functionality for this is pretty straightforward. So this is kind of how it works on the user side, but this only requires modification of the extraction script. So I brought up Eclipse here, and within the sort of the execution method, I actually call this set alternate values method that we've created here, and it runs off and from here reads a list of possible values. And basically I've just basically look at a properties file, and that could be it could be hard-coded in here if there weren't many values, but let's say you had 100 different possible values. In this case we just have about 5, but imagine there's 100 in here, and you don't want to put all that in your class, or if you need to make it easy to modify, a human needs to come in and modify these. It's easier to get to in a properties file. So I just read this out of the shared folders path in a known location. Also, we specify what field we want to do look ahead. Now obviously we wouldn't want to write this to all fields, so we specify exactly which field needs to have the alternate values written, and then with those property values, and then it just iterates through those properties and sets name, value, and type for each of these. And then the XML for this is right here. This is a batch that's we're currently looking at. You can see document level field, we have city is the name, and then we have the alternate values. Now none of these came from any kind of extraction logic. We just programmatically set the alternate values. It's cities: Austin, Dallas, El Paso, Houston, San Antonio. So all those are there as possible alternate values. And confidence is just set to 0 because we're not doing any sort of auto extraction. Even though the value is 0, they are still there as possible alternate values. So that's pretty straightforward. It's a kind of a neat way to kind of leverage what is what's already in the product. If you do have a field where you're going to have human intervention and they're going to select from a long list of possible values, this may be a way to get at that without having to do any kind of extensive customization. This was pretty straightforward to write in the extraction script and have it populate these values. So I hope that's helpful to you, and look for our other Ephesoft videos. Thanks.
All right, thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful to you and kind of makes you think sort of outside the box about the things that Ephesoft can do. Even though you may not always auto-extract every single field that you need, there's certainly other ways to get the data, and Ephesoft can still be a very useful tool for this. I hope you also check out our other Alfresco and Ephesoft videos. Thanks for watching.